Okay, welcome. Why don't we first say the Pledge of Allegiance together? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We have just one item on our agenda tonight, and that is a discussion of the final candidates for the position of city manager of the city. I am going to take just a minute to talk a little bit about the process, and then we can go on. I want to first say thank you to, and I'll get into this a little bit more in a little bit, but thank you to the council, which has been, I think, pivotal throughout the process, and especially as we winnowed down the various candidates for final, to be finalists, and then to interview and talk to them further. Thank you for the public and staff and council for attending the open house, which we had late last week to meet the candidates that we've had apply and who were the finalists. And then appreciate the staff having input, council's input of a lot of members of the public, both in the open house, but also plenty of people sent emails and comments to us as well throughout the process. Tonight is for a discussion of the candidates and for council to determine if there's a candidate with whom they'd like to enter into contract negotiations. City council will then consider a final contract at a later meeting. I think it's important to maybe go over a little bit more of the process, but to start by kind of coming back to first principles. As you may know, the decision of who to hire as the city manager is probably the single most important decision a council can make. And why is that? That's because we've got a city manager form of government which is dictated to us by the charter, and the charter is approved by the people a couple of decades ago. Council makes policy decisions, provides guidance, passes budgets and so forth. But the bulk of the heavy executive lifting is done by the professional staff. And the professional staff is led by what many in the private sector would call a chief executive officer. We call a city manager, somebody who is in charge of carrying out the agenda that is set by council members, working on the work plan, working on projects, day-to-day business of the city is done by that professional staff. Couldn't do that without them. They obviously couldn't do without us either, because we're the ones elected to bring those policy choices and guidance to them. Council directly supervises the city manager. It's one of the only people in city government that we have who reports directly to us and whom we supervise. as a result of that, city manager hires, fires, and carries out the leadership duties. And it's a very big organization, and they have to both manage that organization as well as managing up, which is working with council members to collaborate to make Louisville a better place. How did we get to this point? First, council decided when we had a vacancy to conduct a national search. It's possible to conduct something that's just local. We chose not to do that because we wanted to get the absolute best person that we could get for the city, and there are plenty of really good people out there, both in Colorado and elsewhere. We authorized a competitive process to find a top national recruiting firm, and we eventually hired a firm whose principal, Valerie Phillips, is actually on Zoom tonight, but has been extraordinary in helping us both crafting our message of what we were looking for as a council, helping to put together a statement that city managers and others, deputy city managers, others around the country could look at and decide whether they wanted to apply. And then that competitive process actually was informed very much by Councilmember, sorry about that, Hamilton and Mayor Pro Tem, who had a great deal of input into the vetting of various recruiting firms, and they did a wonderful job. Can't say enough about that, so thank you to you both. After that, the advertisement went out. It was prepared with input from council and staff, and obviously from Ms. Phillips, and 50 candidates applied for the position, which, as I understand it, from those who know more than I about this, is quite a number. The recruiter winnowed down those candidates. There were some who didn't meet our initial criteria, and ultimately provided some information to council. Council, in the end, decided to interview four candidates, and we on those four candidates received input from the public, as I said a little bit earlier, through open houses and other means, and from staff who also interviewed the candidates. There was a survey, by the way, I forgot to mention that, when people went to the open house, and the open house was extraordinarily well attended. Absolute packed house. I think a lot of people got a chance to talk to the various candidates, ask them questions, get a sense of who they were, how they interacted with the public. They filled out a survey afterward to provide further information, both information that they could check off, as well as information they could provide substantively, by writing answers to questions that were put to them. Last Thursday, council members in groups of two interviewed all four candidates. Very, very long day for both council and for the candidates themselves. I had the recruiter sit in with me, if you're wondering how 7 divides by 2. We added 1 and divided into 4 different groups. And then provided information back to the recruiter who provided that to us. We received some materials about the city, input from the public. The recruiter did some reference checking and provided that information to us as well. Over the weekend, on Friday, I guess, actually, one candidate withdrew. So we have been considering 3 candidates for purposes of this discussion. One of the things that I think we did this time that I am particularly pleased about is that we had a weekend to sort of take a breath and consider all of the information that was provided to us by the public, by staff, by the recruiter, in order to hopefully make the best decision possible. So where we are right now is what we're going to do is to do council discussion. And I'll explain that in just a second, at least the way I propose to proceed. We'll take public comments, and then we'll have a final discussion, and then have a motion to appoint members, a couple of members of council to serve as part of the negotiating team along with City Attorney Kelly when we get to that point. The way we're going to structure our council discussion is this. I'm going to ask each council member to state their 2 top choices after going over, if they wish to, and I hope they will, some of the characteristics that they have found particularly compelling on those couple of candidates, and then state an inclination to hopefully choose one over the other. We'll just do that one by one. I think what we'll do at that point is to take some public comment and then come back for any further discussion that we might have about those inclinations. So, with, yeah, just a second. My apologies. I'm sorry for the late. Probably people are wondering who are the 4 candidates and who's the person who withdrew. The 4 candidates are J.R. Harrington, Sarah Ott, Jason Rogers, and Diana Langley. Those are the 4 that we interviewed. Jason Rogers withdrew on Friday, so we'll be considering the 3, Jake Harrington, Sarah Ott, and Diana Langley. Because my colleague, Councilmember Kern, was part of the process of kind of moving once we had a recruiter who took the baton from Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember Hamilton and have worked to help shepherd this process along with a bigger lift by our interim city manager, Sam Fox, and our interim deputy city manager, Meredith Booth, who've been extraordinary. So Why don't you start us off, Councilmember Kern?
Okay, happy to. Thank you very much. Good evening. I wanted to start by saying thank you to Valerie and Bob Murray and Associates. I really appreciate the hard work, and I heard a lot of feedback from residents and staff, as myself as well, that it was a really lovely, difficult decision. So that's because of your efforts in finding us great candidates. So thank you. And before I kind of dive into how I feel about some of the characteristics of my top two candidates, I also wanted to thank the residents for coming out and participating in our meet and greet. This is a decision that we're making on behalf of all of us, the whole city. So it's for you, the staff, is for us, to help us move forward in the direction that you've asked us to move. I also wanted to thank the staff, Louisville staff, and the executive leadership team. I think being part of the process and providing really valuable feedback has helped me to look at this and make a couple of different decisions. So I combined all of that information with my roughly 1 hour conversation with each of the candidates. So the comments I'm making are a combination of my personal opinions, but also the feedback that we received from staff, executive staff, and the residents. So I think that we got really lucky. My top two selected candidates out of the three remaining are Diana Langley and Sarah Ott. And both are excellent choices for Louisville. I'll preface that. I really appreciated them being interested in us and wanting to continue their careers here in Louisville. Diana has a leadership style that is strong and calm and very stabilizing, but I think quiet and powerful, and I really appreciate that about her. I also appreciated that when we had a lot of the conversations, she had ideas on how to balance residents' needs with our staff needs, with council and our work plans. She's so experienced doing this in her previous city, and it really resonated well. I also liked a lot of the strategies and ideas that she had for that process. They were quite complementary to the things that we hear in our community that we would like to see. I also appreciate her experience with wildfire protection planning and just disaster planning in general. I think given the effects of the Marshall Fire on this community and how much work is yet to be done to help ensure the residents' knowledge of future safety, it would be excellent to have a city manager, another leader who can help us with that. She has some experience with helping with different housing ideas as well. The city that she comes from is a bit bigger than ours, but I appreciated some of the ideas and the assistance that she'll be able to give us help work with our housing plan. And Sarah, oddly enough, had a lot of similar attributes that I respected about her. Her approach to disaster preparedness, wildfire preparedness is something that I think would be a huge value add for this community. She has a lot of experience doing that in a forest-laden area versus a grassland, but similar concepts in keeping the community safe. I think that her leadership style is also strong and probably just a little bit different than Sarah's. Sarah's was just a little bit different than Diana's, where Diana, I think, could come in and, lead and it not feel as intentional. I think that Sarah's might feel a bit more intentional. It's just a stylistic difference. She had amazing ideas on how to help us with our economic vitality, which is one of the key issues that our city is facing. And she's done a lot of things. I think we don't think of resort communities as needing help with economic vitality, but through tough times, I think all of the communities do need that. Both, like I said, would be wonderful choices. I think given where Louisville is now, the type of leadership that we need to strengthen things internally and really help be stability and a guiding source for our community after everything we, I think, have experienced and been through in the last 5 years. As difficult as the decision is to make, I lead toward Diana Langley as the choice for the next city manager.
Thank you, Councilmember Kern. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thanks. Yeah, obviously, I think great job by everybody in getting this pool. These last 4 candidates, these final 4 candidates were fantastic, and I know Jason withdrew his name on Friday, but also just a magnificent candidate, and really enjoyed our time interviewing him and wish him the best. Yeah, I have similar opinions. I think Jay was fantastic. Clearly, tons of experience and very steady hand, and I think would do a great job. In our community, there were no, no red flags with any of them. So I guess I can say that for all of them, but certainly no red flags there. I think, Sarah's resume is remarkable. The things that she has accomplished in her tenures in different locations is fantastic. And I think what I was most excited about with Sarah was her work around affordable housing and a lot of tangible results in an area that's really, really important to me. Very powerful leader, very knows exactly what she's going for, and clearly communicated it, and I think would come in and be a fantastic leader of our organization. And I think we'd be very lucky to have her, and I think Aspen would be very sad to lose her. So I thought Sarah was remarkable. And then Diana, similar, just incredible amount of homework that she did in preparing for the interview. She knew us very well and the issues that we were going through, and it was a real pleasure to talk to her. She has, I think, as Judy kind of alluded to, more a calmer leadership style. Seems to be a listener. I was really impressed throughout all my interview questions how often her responses started with, well, I had a conversation with one of your residents, or talking to your staff. Is like everything came from getting information from someone else. So it really seemed to be listen first and think second. And so I really liked her approach and her way of answering all the questions. I really don't think we can go wrong with any of the 3, and it's quite difficult. It's a bit like an apple and an orange for me as far as which thing I'm interested in. I think they both I think Sarah and Diana both bring a potentially just remarkable presence to our community, and I'd be happy to hear from the rest of us, see where people land. We don't get to decide these things on my own. I think I would. I think in this moment in our community, in our country, in our time here with staff and the turnover we had, I think a calm guiding presence is maybe the most beneficial for our staff and our community right now. So, and in a razor's margin, I think I lean as well towards Diana.
Thank you. Yes, I will also add my thanks to consultant, to the staff, to the public for all of their input. It's been a wealth of information, and a lot of work has gone into bringing us 4 amazing candidates. And making a decision for one of the 4 is extremely difficult. They're all well qualified and would each bring their own view and their own assistance, I guess, to the city and make it better in whatever way they approach it. I will say that I was sorry also that Jason withdrew. I will say that I think Jay was the kindest man. He was just very soft-spoken, but knew what he was doing. He had experience. He just knew a lot about how to run a city effectively. With Sarah, I was really impressed with her her ideas and her experience. She had a much more powerful approach to running the city, but she has ideas on housing and things that were just wonderfully motivating for me. With Diana, I think she was, as was mentioned, she's more like a servant leader. She wants to guide the staff a little bit more behind the scenes, I guess, but just motivating and getting them out of their silos and getting them to work together and cooperate with city council and the public. So also, very difficult decision to come up with 2, but I would say my 2 are also Diana and Sarah, and I would also put Diana first.
Thank you. I'm going to speak last here, so I'm going to ask Councilmember Hamilton to go next.
Thank you, Mayor. We were very fortunate to have a pool of applicants who are not only highly qualified, but clearly very passionate about municipal work. So to staff and our recruiter, thank you for making our jobs very difficult in a good way with this process. When I think about who my top 2 candidates are, similar to Councilmember Kern, it's really taking into account a lot of different inputs from staff and community, the survey that was filled out. And one of the things that kept resonating in my mind as I was thinking about this is the desire I heard for systems, staffing, and stability. I kept thinking about that. And when I look at these 2 candidates, my top 2 are Sarah and Diana. They're both very, very qualified candidates and strong leaders. Louisville would be successful with either candidate leading the way, honestly. When I think about Sarah and her very strong application and our interview with her, she's very passionate about her work. She's clearly successful in what she does, and she's familiar with some of the nuances and challenges of working in Colorado, which in itself is a strength. When I think about Diana, I think about how, in addition to an inspirational leader, she's also, I saw her as a tactical and operational leader. And I think that really nicely complements the desire for stability, staffing, and really not only shoring up our systems to make sure that we can maintain our services, but also being that leader that can help guide the way towards achieving these really aspirational goals that Louisville has to be a leader, not only in Colorado, but in the U.S. as a whole. We do some really novel things here. So with that, I would say of the 2 of them, Diana is leaning more towards my top choice at this point in time.
guess I'll go next. I would also like to thank everyone for their involvement in the whole process. I thought I'd start out by citing a few things that I was looking for in making this decision about a city manager. So one thing that has been mentioned before is stability, for both residents and staff. I think that is really important. And then because this person will be leading our staff, it's really important for me that we find someone who our staff is really happy with and who thinks will be a really good person for this position. So the staff input was really helpful. But also, right, this person, the city manager, will interact with residents quite a bit. So I also am looking for someone who is really good about being involved with the community. And of course, the city manager will interact with council, but I think I would like to weigh those other two things first. First we looked at the written applications, and I think, as some of the council members mentioned, I was really impressed with Sarah Ott's application. I think sort of two things in particular really stuck out. One was that she had, really concrete experience creating affordable housing, especially in Aspen. Although it's maybe a little bit different from what we would see here or like to see here, I think that experience could be very useful. And the other thing that really stuck out for me from her application was that she had some also very good experience with decarbonization efforts in Aspen. And some of those efforts are very similar to what we're doing here with our internal decarbonization plan. I guess the other thing I would mention, sort of from her application and her experience, she's in Aspen, but she previously worked in Dublin, Ohio. And I think there are certain attributes of those communities which are maybe, of course, not exactly like Louisville, but somewhat similar to Louisville. I was also very impressed with Diana Langley's application. In particular, I like the fact that she has a civil engineering background and that she sort of had worked her way all the way up in Yuba City, and so has, presumably a very deep knowledge of what it's like not just to be a city manager, but also what it's like to be a staff member at various different levels. So I thought that was a very good strength. What was I going to say? Yuba City seems a little bit different, but then I think there are aspects that translate well or could translate well to Louisville. All right. So then beyond the written application, I was at the meet and greet. Mostly wanted to let residents and staff interact with the candidates. I was really glad that we had so many staff members there and residents. And I looked through all the input that we got back. And then during the interviews, I thought Sarah gave a fantastic interview. And I also thought that Diana gave a fantastic interview as well. Let's see. So a few things that I would mention. I think that they would both be great city managers. I think my impression is that they would have somewhat different leadership styles, which either could be good. As was mentioned before, Sarah really described her leadership model as being based in values that she arrived at with her staff, and that she liked to form co-leadership models. And I thought both of those things could work very well in Louisville. Whereas Diana sort of described herself as a servant leader or as leading from behind. And I think that leadership model could also work really well here. And so then what else did I want to mention? I started off by talking about stability for the city. And I think with either of those two candidates, we could see very good stability. It seemed like both of them were really committed to moving to Louisville, in a sense, both for on a personal level for sort of family reasons, which I think could be a very good way to sort of bond or form a bond with our community. But also, during their interviews, I got a very good sense for how they worked in their own communities with residents and organizations. And again, I think probably sort of different manners, but it seemed like they were both really dedicated and involved in their respective communities. So Sarah and Diana are my top two candidates. I think after reviewing resident input from the meet and greet, my general sense was that maybe there was a little bit of preference for Diana among residents. And then looking at the input from staff, I guess I also felt like maybe there was a little bit of preference for Diana in terms of how her leadership style might sort of come in and blend with what we have here already. So overall, I'm also leaning a little bit towards Diana as my top choice.
Okay. I will echo a lot of what has been said. I thought it was a great process. Thanks to everyone who made it a successful process. I think both the number and quality of applications we got is a testament to the work that went in before we started and during the process and everything up to and including the interviews last week. I thought went really, really well. Also, just want to say how impressed I was by the turnout, both among staff and the public at the meet and greet, and having that spreadsheet of comments from the meet and greet was great. I think we would be fortunate to have any of the four finalists be our city manager. It really was a great selection of candidates to choose from. The interviews were all really very interesting and came off well. I would generally agree with the Mayor Pro Tem's comments sort of about his thinking, and I won't repeat all of that. The candidate who stood out to me the most, like for others, was Diana. And really the thing I want to say about her is sitting in an interview with her was like sitting in an interview with somebody who's already been at the city, who's already worked here. She was not only prepared and knew the facts, but had sort of strategies and ideas around the facts and what's going on at the city. And I, for one, am confident she would be ready day one to jump in, roll up her sleeves, and start work, which is one of the things I was really looking for as part of this process. So like the others who have gone before me, she is my first choice, recognizing, of course, that we have two other very highly qualified candidates, either of whom would be an excellent choice, and it was, in fact, difficult to pick.
Thank you. A lot of the things that I would say have been said already, and I try not to re-plow that ground. I, too, want to say that the quality of our finalists was terrific. It's an embarrassment of riches to see what we had to work with in terms of making the decision. Which makes it, somewhat more challenging. But that's a good challenge to have. It's just, I think it says a lot for the community. I think all of the candidates talked about how active our community seemed to be, how engaged, and that was impressive to them. I think what I was looking for in part was a leadership style that would help to lead, motivate, and empower our staff to do their very best work. And someone who was able to accept criticism, but also to be able to provide information that might and push back on some of the thoughts that we had, to be able to collaborate well. It wasn't just merely a situation where the last thing we want, I think, is a project manager as a city manager. We need somebody who can help to work with us on what council believes is the strategic direction of the city, and to help, if you will, be the clutch that helps drive the drivetrain, which is the executive part of our city government, from the powers that we exercise in providing policy and leadership and direction. So I think in particular, there's a lot of changes going on in Louisville, and I recognize that that's a big piece of this, and something that people are excited about and apprehensive about. And so having a leader who can help navigate through that, I think, is really important. I think having somebody who has a really good sense of economic vitality and what good ways to bring that, as well as somebody who can help us with housing, which is going to be a big issue, and the aftermath of our comp plan process, to really bring that to the next steps. I think also we still are rebuilding from the fire, and I think somebody who has experience there is really important. That was, I think those kinds of, those kind of characteristics were most clearly demonstrated by Sarah and Diana. First, Sarah, very strong manager. I think I thought of her as somewhat commanding, and with a command of kind of how she thinks about leadership. And I think she's creative. I can't help but think of one of the examples that she had of putting former ballerinas on their police force, which I just think is, her explanation of how that worked was just fabulous. And they've had a lot of troubles with housing up there. And so housing was a huge issue that she's had to deal with personally, as well as the staff up there. A lot of good comments about sustainability. I think Councilmember Cooperman talked and explained some of that. And so, and she has the advantage, I think, in the sense of just being from Colorado, how Colorado's Tabor Amendment operates, which is huge here, and those kinds of connections in Colorado obviously are important. Diana, I too was impressed at her kind of progression from being the head of Public Works all the way up to and including being a city manager. I think apart from other things that people had said about her, and both the references for both were very strong. I think that she's calm. The servant leadership sticks out to me as being a nice fit for our community and for our staff. I think lest anybody think that this is, a person who isn't able to lead strongly. That's the last thing I would imagine here. Being calm is so much different than being a strong leader. What she brought was incredible research into the things that we do here. I think she had read all kinds of material, the most important things that we have, the citizen survey, the comp plan, some of the comp plan documents we're dealing with, vision and values, the whole bunch of things that are percolating up. And she had analysis of things that she could see were challenges for us and maybe even problems. And I felt Councilmember Hefner talked about, it seemed like she was already here. In many ways, she was speaking very coherently and directly to us, as at least I felt that way, as a policymaker, to say, here's some things you might want to think about, and here's some things that I see are opportunities and so forth. In economic vitality and in housing, I look at her as being a leader who can help the staff be nimble, who can speak to us in authoritative terms that are well supported by the evidence that she sees and has developed for herself. She talked, one of the things that I heard her say was in housing, she had a lot of areas that she would probe if she came here, economic vitality, housing. I think she knew and knows that there are places that she needs to do a lot of work listening to community members and others before setting too many policy recommendations or recommendations to the staff. I was impressed by that level of humility too. So I think those two, Sarah and Diana, rise to the top for me. Diana, I think, is a little bit stronger and better fit for what we need now in our community. And so that's kind of my inclination. Why don't we take some comments from the public? As those of you who've been involved in this process before know, we give people in the public 3 minutes to speak. You don't have to speak for the full 3 minutes. If you have somebody in the room or online that that is willing to cede their time to you, you could speak for up to 6 minutes. Don't have to speak the full 6 minutes if you don't want to. Try not to boo or clap or otherwise kind of interrupt people who are speaking, because we want full and fulsome discussion. So if there is anybody in the audience here in council chambers or online who'd like a chance to weigh in, we're all ears, and all you have to do is fill out a card. If you're here, fill out a card that's in the outside of the council chambers, and if you're online, you just need to indicate that you want to speak by raising your hand on Zoom. So do we have any public comment by anyone? None?
I'm not seeing any, Mayor.
Okay. All right. So, seeing none, let's come back to council. It seems like we have a pretty much unanimous preference for inclination toward Diana to be our next city manager. So, and if you give me just a second, if there's any, what I'll do is I'll make a motion and then we can talk about it if there are comments and so forth. If you just, I don't think so. It's not a. As part of this too, we'll need to discuss, who would be the couple of folks to help City Attorney Kelly to negotiate the agreement. So I would move to conditionally offer the city manager the position, or excuse me, offer the city manager position to Diana Langley, subject to execution of an employment agreement, and that Councilmember Kern and I have worked on this more recently, continue to act as the council committee for the purpose of negotiating such employment agreement for consideration and approval by the city council at an upcoming meeting.
Second.
Okay, discussion of the motion. Okay, let's take a roll call.
Councilmember Kern,
Yes.
Councilmember Cooperman,
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton,
Yes.
Councilmember Fahy,
Yes.
Mayor Lay,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffner,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Dickinson.
Yes.
I think the ayes have it. Thank you to everybody again. Thank you to council. Very trenchant comments, and I appreciate all the different points of view. I think the rest of us probably can say the same. 7 heads are better than one on this, and I appreciate our decision. So with that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Did we want to make a decision on who will be participating?
It's in the motion.
Oh, okay.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye or nay? Nay.
Did you have something?
No.
Oh. I think you're the first, Mayor Pro Tem, to object to a motion for adjournment, but I appreciate that. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Recording stopped.
For commercial spaces to succeed.
Not mixed use. I think